Hi everyone, my name is Michael Norton and I am an advanced level RAP facilitator, and I'm also a National Engagement and Recovery Lead for the Office of Mental Health Engagement and Recovery. I'd like to welcome you to tutorial 7 of our 8-part series of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, otherwise known as RAP. Today we are going to focus on crisis planning and the 9 separate steps that are involved in the crisis planning phase. So before we start, why do we care about crisis planning? Crisis planning was developed because as part of your RAP, part of your RAP identifies how you become unwell so that you can stop that in the future. But sometimes, despite our best efforts, and even implementing the parts of the RAP plan that preceded the crisis plan, we sometimes end up in a place where we are in crisis and we've lost control, or we are unable to take that control anymore. And in the crisis plan, you are handing over the control to someone else. And so the various steps is about kind of laying out what you want, so that your supporters, the people that will actually take over that control, will know what you want, so they can self-advocate for you, and they can take over the responsibility until such a time as you can start taking back responsibility again. So what are these 9 parts of the crisis plan, and why are they important? As you can see, these are the 9 parts of the crisis plan, and they kind of differ. They're all different parts, but they all interlink with each other to form something that's known as an advanced directive. An advanced directive is a plan that you put in place for when you are in a position that you can no longer take over or have control over a situation. And in an advanced directive, it tells your supporters exactly what you want them to do. It tells them exactly what treatment you want to be taken, what medication you want to be taken. All that kind of stuff is all vitally important. So we're going to run down through the crisis plan there now, and we're going to see how different aspects integrate and mix with each other. The first section of the crisis plan works on what am I like when I am well. You may remember from tutorial 3, daily maintenance planning, that one of the parts of that section was what am I like when I am well. And this is really a copy and paste exercise from that section to this section. And you might say, why do you need that? And the reason for that is your supporters need to know what you are like when you are well, so that they can pretty much measure, this is what you're like when you're well, this is where you're at now, and this is where you need to go. So they can see where the end point is for them. So that's literally just a copy and paste exercise from the daily maintenance plan. Signs others need to take over. So you might have noticed in the last couple of tutorials, we were talking about the triggers, the early warning signs, and when things were breaking down was yesterday. This is a clear escalation from when things are breaking down. You are now in a crisis phase and you've lost control. So you list down the signs that you've lost control. Maybe you're not thinking clearly, you're not thinking rationally. You might be very, very high or very, very low. All these kind of things are what's involved in identifying whether you are in a place of crisis or whether you're in a place of control, if that makes sense. We then go to section 3, which is your supporters. And in this section, you're just listing down 3 to 5 supporters that would really stick up for you, self-advocate for, or advocate for you, and work through your crisis with you. And who you want to be there with you in a crisis. And also, who do you not want to be there? So we all have that one person that we know of that we just do not want near us when we're in a really bad place. And that may be because they're annoying, or they're not able to listen to what you have pre-planned. Another aspect to this as well is that sometimes when you're picking out your supporters, it's good to identify what are my supporters good at. And it's also good to identify what people I wouldn't want as supporters because they're not good at this particular section. So for instance, I know I've said this before, my mom would be a great supporter for me. And that's because she's able to talk to me when I'm in a really bad place. She's very, it's very open with her. It's very easy to go and talk to her, and I know that she will do the necessary steps if required, to help me to get to a place where I can take back responsibility. My dad, on the other hand, even though I love him very much, he would not be great at this section when you're unwell. He, for various reasons. So for me, I know that one of my supporters would be my mom. But even though my dad is very important to me, he would not be a supporter in this situation because I know he would not follow the plan. So that's, in this section, you're just listing down who are your supporters and who are the people you don't want near you during the crisis. Medications is another important one that comes up. In the United States, and in Marianne Copeland's version of this crisis plan, the person themselves get to choose what medication they go on and what medication they don't go on. It doesn't really transfer over here in Ireland. So really for this section, you're writing down what medications you're on, what allergic reactions you have to medications, what medications that helped you before, but also what medications did not help you. So that would form part of your advance directive. But it's not, but ultimately when it comes to medication, it's your doctor's say, but this is putting your voice to the table, stating what medications you are on and what medications worked for you in the past and what didn't. So, the next part of this crisis plan is treatments. And it looks at not medication treatments, but alternative treatments. And that may be Reiki, aromatherapy, hypnosis. It might be reflexology. It might be a lot of different things, but it's not medication based. It's alternative therapies that help you in your own recovery and that helps you in a crisis situation. The next stage of this plan is home, community care, and respite centers. And this is where you want to be treated. So whether you want to be treated at home, in a community care place, or a respite centers. So really, in this option, you have the option of maybe instead of going into hospital, you go to something like a home-based treatment team. And a home-based treatment team are a group of nurses that come out and they check on you during the weekends and during the week as well, to make sure that you're okay and to support you around your crisis. In terms of community care or respite centres, there is crisis houses situated around the country in Ireland. And these crisis houses are places that you can go in and you can just take a break from reality, but you have that freedom to leave when you wish. You have that freedom to be on your mobile phone, all that kind of stuff. All these kind of things that you wouldn't necessarily have when you're in hospital. And then after that, is treatment facilities. And sometimes, despite our best efforts and despite the way sometimes that we'd like to stay out of hospital, sometimes we need to be in hospital. But in this treatment facilities bit is really useful, especially if you have private healthcare insurance, because if you have private healthcare, you have a choice of, in Ireland anyway, you have a choice of, going to your local hospital and being treated there, or going to a private psychiatric unit, such as St. Pat's or St. John of God's. And these are private units that also support you in your recovery. But it obviously is dependent on whether or not you have private healthcare insurance. The second last bit of the crisis plan is help from others. And this, in this section, this is where you list the kind of things you want your supporters to do. And that can be anything from making sure that the bins are taken out every Friday for collection, paying the bills, all that kind of stuff, to actually being there to hold me and cuddle me when I need it. So these are that can range, and that's up to each individual person what kind of help they want from others. It also is a good idea in this section to know what things you find unhelpful in a crisis, to make sure that other people don't do that. And that can include anything from telling me to cop on to trying to get me to eat 3 meals a day when I feel like not eating 3 meals a day, that kind of thing. The final section of the crisis planning phase of this RAP plan is a stage called Inactivating my crisis plan. And this tells your supporters when you actually are able to get out of crisis and go into the next phase of the RAP plan, which is the post-crisis planning phase. And these can be a list of things like I'm able to get a good night's sleep for the last week. I'm able to feel good in myself for 4 days in the last week. And that kind of thing suggests to your supporters that, you're now out of the crisis phase and that you're going into the post-crisis phase. So therefore, we need to inactivate the crisis plan and start giving back some responsibility to the person. So that's how the crisis planning works. It goes through 9 phases. What am I like when I'm well? Signs others need to take over. Supporters, medications, treatments, albeit alternative treatments, home, community care, respite centres, treatment facilities, help from others, and finally, inactivating my crisis plan. So that's really it for the crisis planning phase. It is quite simple once you actually sit down and write it out. But it can look very daunting there. And it's really important that you put in as much detail as you can in your crisis plan. Because remember, your crisis plan is going to be an advance directive. It is going to be something that your doctors, your nurses, and anyone on your care team have to consider when they are kind of deciding what treatments to give, what way to give treatment, and what way to support you. So that's really important. And remember, more detail is better as well because of your supporters. Your supporters need to know as much as possible what way decisions should be made. And that's why it should be between 3 and 5 supporters. Preferably an odd number, because when there is a disagreement among supporters, the 3rd person or the 5th person has the final say. Generally, it's a good idea when you're looking at your supporters in the things to nominate someone who is the key supporter, the one that takes the overriding decision when there is not a majority. And that's really important as well to have and something to consider. So I suppose between now and next week, I'd like you to think about what kind of things would you put into a crisis plan? Who would be my supporters? If I was ever in a situation that I had lost control and people needed to take responsibility from me for a period of time. These are really interesting questions, and you might think, why? But it's really important to think about these because we all are going to end up in a situation like that at some stage or another, whether it is through our physical health or our mental health. And it's always a really good idea to plan for that. Next week, what we're going to have a chat about is the last phase of the RAP plan, and it's the last tutorial in our series. It is going to look at post-crisis planning and the importance of gradually giving back responsibility. That's what post-crisis planning is about. So between now and then, I hope you have a lovely and fantastic weekend. And I look forward to giving the last tutorial on Monday. Thank you.